My name is Dan Gisolfi, and on behalf of Discover and FINOS, I would like to welcome you to our Accessibility Theme Builder Global Accessibility Awareness Day Celebration Summit. For the second consecutive year, I'm honored for the opportunity to have Discover and FINOS come together and celebrate Global Accessibility Awareness Day. We have a jam-packed agenda for you here today. We have a bunch of information to share with you, a great deal to educate you on, and some opportunities for you to get involved. So next slide, please. So as I pointed out, our agenda is jam-packed. We have some opportunities to listen, learn, and act. To start us off, we're going to be hearing from Natasha from Anita B around inclusion. Additionally, we have a heartfelt story from Shelby from Discover on the importance of accessibility. And then our team is going to jump in and teach us about Theme Builder, specifically about design ops and the importance of a design ops tool chain to accessibility compliance. And this is going to circle around our work within FINOS around the Theme Builder open source project and the amount of work that's been done in that project over the past year. And then you all are going to have the opportunity to learn from our representatives from FINOS on how to actually join that project and the importance of actually participating in it so that you can actually be contributing to global accessibility and from an open source perspective. Next slide, please. So I want to just give you a little bit of our journey over the last year, as Discover has participated with FINOS around global accessibility. But I want to step back just for a moment. In my career, accessibility has been kind of an activity that's been constant. I do remember, for those of you who are familiar with WCAG and the ability to bring WCAG capability into JavaScript, the ARIA technology was actually developed by a team that we had over at IBM, and we brought that to the Mozilla Foundation, and we worked in the open source arena around that. And our team was specifically focused on working in open source. Now here at Discover, we've brought that same attention, that same passion to bringing accessibility awareness and capabilities to the open source, but here in a different way. So what's happened about, roll our calendar back about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, January of 23, one of our colleagues here at Discover had an idea about bringing together designers and developers early on in the process, in the design ops process, if you wish, before code is written, to make sure that accessibility compliance can be addressed a priority of actually writing code. So we started with that ideation. From that idea, here at Discover, we actually came up with about 8 different patent disclosures. 5 of them were actually are patent pending. Of those 5, we took 2 of them and we actually implemented them into code, which is now the Theme Builder, the Accessibility Theme Builder. We built that code in around May this time. It's actually Global Accessibility Awareness Day last year. Last year was May 15th. We held a global hackathon with FINOS, which included about 27 countries. And we not only celebrated global accessibility awareness, we actually helped bring together folks, hackers, around not just of coders, but also designers together to work together to come up with new ideas around bringing together, using the Theme Builder. And what that came out of that was not only a lot of fun, but also the creation of a new open source project. The Theme Builder was something we had to discover after the hackathon. FINOS helped graduate that project from Discover's property into GitHub over to the FINOS community to establish a formal community. And it's been operating as a formal community for the last year, or I would say the last, since August of last year, I guess. 8 months to go from that, go through that journey. It's amazing. But what that told me, what that conveyed to me and my team, is the passion around accessibility is not just here at Discover, it's globally. And your all participation here today is just another reflection of that. And I'm ecstatic that you guys are participating and have an interest in possibly joining us in this community. So hopefully, with what you'll learn today, you'll get you'll take that passion a little further and actually join us. Next slide, please. Well, actually, I think I'm handing off now to Natasha.
Yay! Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Hi. Super excited to be here on behalf of AnitaB.org and in my mini section of glory with being with you all. I am going to talk a little bit about why inclusion matters and how it's going to look like is I am going to tell you a little bit about a story about me, about how I believe and why I believe it's so important that we do this work in the community. So let's get started. So a little bit about me, right? You should always know a little bit about someone. And in my eyes, I feel like I could tell you, like, my favorite color is purple. If you come to GHC and you see me, you're gonna know purple is my favorite color. I have on a purple top here. I believe in the power of ideas, right? So the fact that last year folks came together to build out a product that also has pending pending trademarks and patents, and I think that's a big deal. We know how hard it is to even get one idea off the ground, but multiple ideas, kudos Discover, kudos to the FINOS project. So resiliency is going through hard things or doing hard things, right? Not anything, not everything is always going to be the easiest. It might be a little bit difficult, but through having smart people with you, I really do believe that we could do a lot of things together. Food, have to eat sometimes, love seafood, and definitely one of the best things I've learned to do, although some folks say that you should probably do work when you're listening to audiobooks, I actually just like doing, like, Sudoku and getting my mind going. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm not going to tell you about the amount of businesses I have or the startups I have. I am going to talk about AnitaB.org and how it brings a lot of the things that we are about in this room, in this Zoom room, together in the same place. So who is and what is AnitaB.org? So, right, we're a nonprofit organization. We are worldwide. And India, we have GACI and have AnitaB.org India, right? And so what we imagine is a world where the people who build technology, and imagine they look like it, right? You mirror that, right? You don't have just one group of genders or one group of non-binary folks saying, this is how I imagine the world to be, and I'm the only one creating it. And so when we think about the idea of before we even get to coding, right? Let's sit down, folks. Let's sit down. Let's figure out how we make this accessible, right? How do we make sure that all folks, no matter what economic status they're in, no matter what capabilities they have, right, that they can still be able to interact and engage and give their input, right, on a product. Sometimes people think that, oh, that's an outlier, right? Like, we don't have to consider that, right? No. One of the things how CEO Brenda Darden Wilkerson believes in at AnitaB.org is the theory and the idea of intersectionality, right? Like, who are we all as people, right? And also the curb kind of effect, right? So don't know if y'all have ever heard about this, but basically, sidewalks was really hard for some people to get up on, right? Or how older folks might have sciatica. Some of us might have knee problems, right? We also have folks who have like wheelchairs and strollers. And it was just like, why don't we just start cutting these curbs, right? Let's cut these curbs. Let's allow people to get up on the curb a lot easier. And although they said, oh, we only wanted to do it for folks who are handicapped, what they started to realize that a lot more people were using, the curbs, right? They were like, oh, I'm gonna walk on this curb cut because it's gonna allow me to get up on there easier. And so just to start thinking about that, no, when we build with everyone in mind, when we build with people who look like the societies and the economy that we are in, a lot happens. And especially as it relates to money, y'all. especially as it relates to money. Not everyone has the same access to knowledge. Not everyone has the same access to wealth managers or understanding what to do with it. So to be able to build around this idea of money, wealth, is just a great thing to do. And so in anitaB.org, I'm the senior global community manager of communities around the world, right? So in my ever going day, I deal with around 200 community volunteers who are residing around 44 communities plus, right? Although we currently look into and say, hey, we are going to invest in these 44 communities, try to figure out how to partner with companies. I mean, we've done a lot of stuff in Chicago. We really, really want and do believe community matters, right? Connection matters. And when we think about open source and the open source world, it's about community. It's about how do we build together? How do we make the world different together? And so we are really big on that, especially in our membership platform, year-long opportunities. Everyone knows us, and a lot of people, not everyone, knows us for the Grace Hopper celebration, but they don't know that we do it. So yes, we do it as anitaB.org in remembrance of Anita Borg, who was our legacy founder and who also believed in the power of women getting in and staying in tech. So that's a little bit about membership, right? And so even if you all are here and you have an idea of what we could further do together in local communities in person, right? Because COVID was different, y'all. Like COVID had people changing up their whole life before COVID. So I've been here for a little bit, but before COVID, people were out. They were out. You said you have like you're gonna code together at so and so place and so and so place. People got out. Now people be like, can I just do that online? So we want community. We want it in numerous ways, and we definitely want people to come out to code together. So membership and local communities and galvanizing folks on the ground is my passion and it's what I do. And so when we talk about inclusion, I want to tell you personally why this is important to me too, right? I received my master's in computational chemistry on a women in STEM scholarship by LIU in Brooklyn, right? But if people did not consider the fact that me, a Black girl from the Bronx, right, not really thinking about what I was going to do next. I was like an athlete, a triple star athlete. You know, I did chemistry just because, you know, I just didn't like biology anymore, like blood and like cutting up pigs, like that wasn't for me. And so I didn't go that route. But by getting into chemistry and by doing this work, I eventually got a scholarship, right? Money is an important thing. Would I have been able to really afford, right, out of pocket, a master's degree? And at LIU, no, it's really expensive. But when we think about inclusion, I was included, right, because they gave me the opportunity to learn and get a master's there. As it relates to General Assembly full stack, who remembers, and you can put in the chat, remember when General Assembly and everybody was doing Ruby on Rails, right? Like you would go to a hackathon and all we did was Ruby on Rails. I don't know if you remember that, like, right, synthetic sugar. And that's what I learned, right? I came into General Assembly, I was like a teacher and I transitioned. And so I felt included in this process of tech, right? Of, hey, you know, you can learn this stuff too, right? You don't have to feel like you're an outsider. And that's belonging, that's inclusion. That's how and why it's important that we not only think about the code first, we think about the person, the people, who are they, and how to get them involved in our world. And so by doing this, I felt emboldened and brave. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to a hackathon. So I don't know about y'all, but there was a time when you went to hackathons and there was like little to no women at hackathons. And I'm not saying it to say anything but the facts. And it could be very overwhelming, right? Especially if being a newbie and you're like, I don't know how to do anything. But what I like about this project a lot is that you come as you are, right? And what people don't know, that sometimes you even looking at the code base and commenting something, saying, this is what I know happens when we do this. This is what I know what happens when we do that. That's in the code base. That's a level of contribution. But sometimes people don't know that your contribution matters. Your voice matters. You showed up mattered. You saying, you know what, that doesn't really make sense, right? That's not something that really helps. So that's something that I really, really believed in and I thought was very important. Robert, I know you have a question. Just give me a second, unless you can't see. Okay, thank you. Someone's gonna help him, right? Appreciate y'all. And so I'm including Robert into my talk. So if it's an accessibly or sound thing, tell me. And so in my journey of being included, right, I went to hackathons, I went to startup weekends, right? The great thing about startup weekends, what I'm hearing right now in this project is that you could have someone who's a designer, Figma designer, or whatever designer, Adobe, Photoshop. You have someone who's like a coding person, an expert, a solution architect, someone coming into the same room. And then now you're saying, you know what? Without even getting into this code, what are your thoughts? What are we doing? And I think that's the power of this work. And then obviously money. We like talking about money, no lie. Who doesn't like talking about? I'll talk about money all day, right? So it's really good, the idea of what is it, what does it mean for us to feel included as people? And then that also gets extended into the work that we do, right? And then the last two things that's important about inclusion is I found my community, right? I attended GAC 2014 and I was like, huh, I'm 8 years into finishing my master's in computational chemistry. I already have a master's in, math education. Do I really want to do this? And at GAC 2014, a community of technology folks, it was like, you are going to finish this. We are here to help you. We're here to support you. I don't know who knows Fortran here, but I was looking at these subroutines and I was like, Dr. Matsunaga, I don't know what's going on in this init, our subroutine. I am clueless. But, eventually I got through, right? This basically how to propagate in a molecule diode, right? Like it was just something insane, like wave packet and Schrödinger equation. But that being said, the community makes sure that we are able to build together, move forward together. And then I became a volunteer and full-time hire. So that's inclusion as you see me as an individual, making sure that I'm able to show up, give my talents and my thoughts. Give me one more minute. I didn't know I was going over. Sorry about that. And so with AnitaB.org, we're doing the open source, right? We want people to be involved and feel included. We make sure we do events that make sure everyone knows that your thoughts matter, from pizza party to certified cloud programming. And then obviously this is going to be included, Paula, as we continue the work. So look into that for us. And I know that the last open source day, it made a difference. We had around 2,000 people register, let's call it 3,000, right? 2,572. And they felt really good about the program and what they learned. So I do want to thank the folks that are here who supported and helped with that. They felt 89% that they agreed that participating in this made them feel like a part of this community and they had a great experience. And so as I continue and as we continue to do this work, note that it matters. We're going to make sure that we collaborate and pull it into GHC. It's going to be the day before, open source day is the 4th, and the preliminary is Tuesday, right? So as we continue and as you all listen to this, just note that inclusion is not something that's for those folks to do. Inclusion is for us to do, knowing our past, knowing our history, and knowing how we got here. All right, so super excited for everyone. Thank you for having me. I think it's an honor to be in a room of folks who thinks about including others and making sure that we change this future and we change the world one step at a time. So thank you so much. I will hand it off. And I really, really enjoy meeting anyone. I'll drop my LinkedIn in the chat. Thank you. Yours, Shelby.
Thank you, Natasha. That was amazing. So now we want to hear from Shelby Mitchell. She is the head of design accessibility here at Discover. She couldn't make it today, but she recorded a video for us. So hopefully, sometimes this takes a minute to play, but hopefully we're not going to have a problem.
Hey, my name is Shelby Mitchell, and I am excited to be here to talk a little bit about why digital accessibility is important.
Sorry, I'll start that again.
I lead the digital accessibility team at Discover, and really my passion from an accessibility standpoint started a number of years ago. I do have a personal connection to disability, and that is my firstborn son who had a stroke sometime early in his life. Could have been before birth or after birth, we don't know. But that really got me started in thinking about how can I leverage my digital marketing, communications, customer experience, knowledge, and tie that in with my personal experience of being a mom of a child with disabilities. And so I started to get curious and started to learn more about universal design, inclusive design, digital accessibility, and made the case for creating a distinct function within Discover several years ago. And so our team is really focused on creating the best possible digital experience for all of our customers. And what's really important too, as I started down this journey, is that, you know, oftentimes people will say, I don't know anybody with a disability, or how, you know, is it really that big of a group? And yes, it is. 27% of the US adult population has a disability. They have $490 billion in disposable income annually. And if you expand into their households, that number grows to over $13 trillion of disposable income annually. So it's really, you know, it is a large group. It's a group that any one of us can join at any time. And it's, you know, it can happen through, you know, it can be temporary. Maybe we break our arm, or it can be situational. Maybe we're holding a child while we're trying to open a door. Or it might be something permanent, either through the natural process of aging, or we have some sort of accident or health issue that comes up later in life, or it might have been something that we were born with or have had for a very, very long time. So when we take a step back and we start to think about the experiences that we're creating, we have to think and how we have to consider who is not currently at the table. Because we tend to, even though we don't intend to, but we tend to create experiences based on what we know about ourselves, what we know about some sort of persona. But that persona often is similar to us when we're getting started. We don't take into account the fact that this persona may be blind. Maybe they have a mobility disability. Maybe they have a vision disability. So oftentimes our personas don't go quite far enough. So I always like to take a step back and say, okay, who is not represented? What am I not considering, and who do I need to bring into the conversation so that we're creating a richer experience? And how can I co-create with others who have disabilities so that, again, we're creating the best possible experience for all of our customers? And so just something to think about. I'm really excited that you're participating in this virtual event. Because as you learn more about the theme builder and what it does, and how it can be leveraged, it's really exciting to continue to come up with different ways and new ways and expanded ways of how this tool can be used. And so I hope that you have a wonderful day today, and feel free to reach out to me anytime on LinkedIn. I'm always looking to and loving to connect with others. So I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Shelby. Thank you very much for that. So now is my time. So hi, everyone. I'm Giselina Hosa, and I'm an expert innovation design facilitator for Discover Financial Services. So my job consists of designing digital experience strategies from concept to launch, and facilitate design thinking workshops for other teams. During these workshops, we help answer big questions like, what is the best solution for a particular problem? Or can we identify all the pain points within an existing digital experience? And many more. But today, I'm here to talk about obviously, accessibility. So in today's world, we know that we use digital products for almost everything, from scheduling a gym class to ordering groceries, watching TV, listening to music, going to the doctor, or even paying for parking. So, and I'm here to unpack why we're so passionate about product accessibility. So before we dive in, here's a brief overview of my agenda. First, I'll talk about the role that design and development play in achieving accessibility and why should we care about accessibility. And then I'll introduce the team builder. I will be followed by my teammates, Evan and Aaron, who will give a live demo of the team builder. So without further ado, we know that for a product to be really, really successful, designers and developers have to collaborate seamlessly. There are so many tools that enable us to work together that collaboration between designers and developers is not an issue anymore. We have it all, right? Okay, just kidding. Even with today's advancements in collaboration, we still have a lot of room for improvement, especially regarding accessibility. And here are some of the problems that prevent us designers and developers from achieving accessible products. First and foremost, designers and developers are often unfamiliar with all the accessibility requirements. Many developers might lack the ability to properly read handoff design files, which results in disparities between design and implementation. Then we have like some designers might not start designing based on an existing component library, and therefore ambiguity is created, and we don't know what are the existing components versus the new components that have to be built, and as a result, we have duplication and inconsistency. So also, design libraries often exclude essential component variants needed to assure accessibility, and accessibility testing is often skipped in during the product cycle. So, and even when it is performed, some of the silent issues that affect accessibility sometimes or oftentimes are labeled as cosmetic, and therefore they are not properly prioritized. Additionally to that, today we expect products to work in all renditions of desktop, mobile sizes, native apps from different platforms, wearables, why not, and in light and dark mode. And of course, all of this will be inaccessible. By the time we design and implement all that, the design and development trends have changed and our products might feel outdated. So we need to start all over again. On top of that, accessibility guidelines also change to accommodate new information and improve the ease of use of digital designs products for people with disabilities. And with all these moving pieces, accessibility won't be achieved with designers and developers working in isolation. Instead, we need to work together to ensure that we design and develop reusable, scalable, and accessible design systems. So, but what does accessibility mean? The previous speakers have talked about this, right? Like, accessibility means that people with disabilities can successfully do what they need to do, just as someone who does not have a disability. We use the gold standard provided by the Web Accessibility Initiative, whose goal is to provide the strategies, standards, and resources to ensure that people with disabilities have a good experience navigating through digital products. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is also an ISO standard, serve as the basis for laws and regulations requiring AA compliance, and they provide technical specifications to improve accessibility for web and mobile applications. This compliance with the WCAG is federally required under certain circumstances. So up until recently, companies made efforts to meet WCAG 2.1 AA guidelines, but the WCAG recently came out with the 2.2 AA guidelines, which means revising and updating all of our systems again. And even though providing accessible experiences is hard with all these moving pieces, it is also the right thing to do. And at Discover, doing the right thing is one of our values. But it's the right thing to do because more than 1 billion people in the world have a disability. Among visual, hearing, motor, cognitive disabilities, the cognitive disabilities are the most common. So today, unfortunately, I'm fortunate to present as a woman without disabilities. However, that might not always be the case. I will age. With age, my abilities might change. And in fact, as Shelby was touching on earlier, every person here today at some point will undergo either a temporary or a situational disability, which will raise awareness on what is to live, even if momentarily, with a disability. So temporary or situational disabilities can range in severity, and they can also be visual, hearing, motor, or even cognitive related. Temporary disability, for example, might be the inability to utilize your limbs due to having an accident, but you will heal, and then you will be able to use your limbs. A situational disability, on the other hand, might be that you cannot use your arm because you are carrying a baby. What I'm saying, can you hear my dogs barking? I'm so sorry about that. But what I was saying is that accessible experiences could benefit us all at some point. But accessible experiences can always benefit people with disabilities profoundly. So why don't we care more about accessibility? So let's talk about the numbers again. In 2022, research made by Forrester suggested that for each dollar invested in UX and web accessibility, the return on investment was $100. So on top of being the right thing to do, accessibility is also good business. And it's good business because people with disabilities account for at least $1 trillion of disposable income worldwide. Lastly, allies of people with disabilities tend to prefer accessible products and services, meaning that the disposable income worldwide for accessible experiences grows from $1 trillion to $8 trillion. Again, really, really good business. But even with all those numbers, we're still doing a very poor job because research suggests that over 98% of homepages have at least one accessibility issue. And the average number of accessibility issues on homepages is 60.9. Among those 60.9 issues, the 6 most common accessibility issues are: first, low text contrast to the background; second, images without alt text; empty links; missing labels for fields; empty buttons; and missing document language tags. The number one issue, text with low contrast, mostly affects people with visual or cognitive disabilities. And 5 out of these accessibility issues affect people who use screen readers to navigate the web. Sadly, but luckily at the same time, most of these accessibility issues can be resolved quite easily. However, it hasn't been until accessibility issues began resulting in fines and lawsuits that most companies started investing in meeting the minimum WCAG requirements. But given the numbers, it's not enough. So how do we do accessibility better? How do we go beyond the bare minimum? We're thinking, what if everybody had a design system rooted in accessibility? One that is reusable, is scalable, allows continuous integration and delivery of user interfaces, maybe? Or what if we had a design and development libraries in sync with each other? where we could update elements in one and seamlessly roll out changes across entire design systems, component libraries, and products in minutes, maybe? What if we could align desktop and mobile experiences and provide light and dark mode that meet the WCAG AA guidelines without any additional effort? That would be pretty cool. What if we were able to empower users to adjust the UI to provide additional support for their specific needs? Or what if we could create branded themes within our design systems that could deliver and enforce WCAG guidelines for UX, UI, visual design, accessibility, content, photo, video, you name it. And lastly, what if we could find a way to leverage open source to do all of this? So here's where Theme Builder aims to come in. Theme Builder is a tool that combines brand design input plus the structure of an atomic design plus the logic to generate accessible output code. This out-of-the-box solution produces design and React component libraries combined into a branded and accessible unified design system. So, but what is atomic design? Atomic design is not something that we invented or came up with. Brad Frost did, and you can read more about it in his book, Atomic Design. But today I'm gonna attempt to really quickly describe it. So atomic design is based on chemistry. In chemistry, the smallest possible particles are called atoms. Atoms join to form molecules, and then organisms that are more complex structures made out of multiple molecules and so on, right? And that's pretty much where our chemistry analogy stops. But the principle continues. So small pieces make bigger structures and so on. So in atomic design, we start by defining the smallest particles in our design systems. This could be things like color, typography, or anything that could not be divided any further. Then the molecules of our design system, such as buttons, will be the combination of multiple atoms. These molecules are the foundation of the design system. Then we have organisms that are a group of different molecules. Think of a component that includes a text field, a label, and a button. Then we have templates, where we combine multiple organisms and molecules. Then we have experiences, which are specific instances of templates. And for an experience to be effective, we have to test it on the specific device that it was designed for, desktop, mobile, whatever it might be. But this is just the starting point for Theme Builder. Now, Evan and Aaron will demonstrate how we use Theme Builder to create an atomic design system that is able to create a seamless collaboration between designers and developers. So you can take it from here.
Thank you, Giselle. Let me just get everything set up here. Camera's on, perfect. And hopefully everyone can see my screen right here. If not, let me know. So I'm going to demo our amazing tool we built, the Accessibility Theme Builder. So as Giselle said, the purpose of this, it really is to facilitate designers transitioning to developers while making sure accessibility is handled right away. It's going to make things a whole lot easier, really, from designers to developers, and even changes in the middle of the process will be very easy to handle with this tool. So without further ado, so let's begin. So this is the home page for it. You will have set this up locally, or you would have accessed it via this link up here. So you create design systems through this tool. You can see there's some loaded already. We're going to go ahead and create a new one. So let's create a new design system. Let's give it a name, call it demo. So as you can see, we're going to go through a process of atomic design right here. We're going to start with atoms. the very first things we need to do before we do anything else is establish the colors. So you can see everything's grayed out until color palette's done. So we go to color palette. I'm just going to add some colors here. You can add it by using the wheel or just typing in a hex value. I'm just going to pick 3 random colors. It's not going to look great, but I just need to pick a few colors. So let's do red and blue, maybe a lighter blue. Blue. Let's do one more. Let's do yellow. Yep. Great. So I've selected my 3 colors. You can see it produces the different shades as follows. And it's already created some variables for you to use down here. You'll see at the very end, we'll be able to export everything we created as variables to use downstream, which is really the power of this tool. So we got our colors ready. Now we're going to create a theme from the colors. So this effectively uses the colors we made to set these other variables right here. So our primary color is going to be this shade of red. Our secondary is going to be the shade of blue, and tertiary is going to be this shade of yellow. Meanwhile, our background colors are going to be automatically calculated to be accessible. So it's allowing us to do white here. We can do black off black too. And the gradients, we can select a color here, and it's going to only allow us what will be accessible from then on. So certain options will be eliminated because of the original color we chose. Just to give you an example of how all this works. Let's use a button color. Let's make it a nice blue, and then icon color, make it a nice red. So just going through the motions here. An accent color, let's make it yellow. Okay, and as you can see, again, variables have been created based on the colors we've selected. I'm going to show the theme. So this is the first step you do here, set up your colors and your color theme. So I'll scroll up here, as you can see, it's established your primary, secondary, tertiary colors and your background colors that are allowed with these colors, whereas your gradients, button colors, also it's showed you what it looks like in dark mode. As you can see, the background it's given us is not completely dark because of the colors we've selected to make sure it's accessible. And then it's already generated code. We can go ahead and use these variables if we want to, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do that at the very end. But it's already got them available for you. And you see there's so many of them here for you to use. All right, onwards. A few more add-ins to do. There's typography. There's a whole lot of typography add-ins to go through. So font settings. You can select a primary and a secondary font. You can either select it from a drop-down here where we've preloaded 100 most common Google fonts. So I can change the font. As you can see, as I change things, everything changes around me. Alternatively, I can type it in. For example, Times New Roman wasn't one of these. I can give it Times New Roman if I want to. I'll get a warning saying that we don't know what font weights are supported, so you have to know that on your own. However, if we do select a font we know, it'll tell us the font weights allowed. So let's go to maybe this one here. There's only 3 supported, right? So if we go down here, it'll tell us that the font weight we've selected is not valid, so we have to select a new one. It'll be quite helpful in telling us what we can and can't choose. In addition, as you can see, font weights for the typography, we have 5 different styles we can use. For the body is the main one right here, font weight 1. But for different types of text, we can change the font weight we use for it. And of course, we can change the font size as well. It's much larger now. So just going through typography there. And let's see, there's a few more things. Display and header styles. So we can create, as well as having general font settings, we can have settings for individual styles of text. So displays and headers right here. You can use a slider here to change the degree at which the font size increases, or you can go in and manually edit everything individually, right? Same with body styles. We have 6 of them, 1, 2, 3, and bold. And you can go in there and you can say, I want this main body to be bigger. And notice it'll actually restrict you from a certain ratio. So it says WCAG doesn't want you to have the line height to be this much bigger than the text. So it's restricting us. So I can't do that until I select the right value. So stuff like this that is really going to help you with everything. But for example, if I make the text bigger, it would allow me to then do that. But it allows me to do 13 here. And you can see it's changed. And then we have obviously many other text styles we can use: subtitles, captions, overlines, labels. They're all here too. You can edit each one. And as you can see, as you do, the code's being generated for each of these classes. You have a variable set up, and of course the restrictions we provide make sure that everything's accessible as you build it. In addition, atoms, you have things like elevations, bevels, and glow. I won't go into too much detail here, but you can edit these as well. So you can see examples here of your elevations. I can change items here, and it will reflect in the example right here, and in the variables below. So this is very useful here. And there's a few other add-ons as well. Lots to go through here, but I think we get the idea. So let's all go into molecules. So after you've gone through all this, set up your atoms the way you want them to be, you have all these variables generated. There's one more stage to do. You go to molecules, and this is kind of the components that use the atoms as building blocks. So you'll start to get larger components here. So for example, we can go straight into avatars. We have the ability to change more things about them. We want a larger border. We can do that. We'll have the variables set up as so. Same with buttons. We have a button looking like this. We can change the button radius if we want to. Different already. We can change the text to small. There's a lot we can do, and the variables be reflected. Do one more example, maybe. We have our cards here. We can change the border radius, for example, look more rounder right there. We can change the padding to be much larger. There it is. So, and again, you have your variables generated based on the changes you make, which is the key idea. And everything will be generated. There's all these calculations behind the scenes to make sure that everything's accessible. So speeding along here, components, the next tab right here is basically where you visualize everything. So you've made your atoms and molecules, and then you can have the ability to see how everything looks. See the accordions right there. You can actually view it in light and dark mode here, right? And you can see buttons here. There's so much to look at here. You can look at it on your own here, but like, we have everything lists, and of course we can change it back to light mode, switches and sliders. Yeah, organisms again are a stage above, so we begin to put more things together right here, so you can see how everything looks. Again, something to look at in your own time. And then finally, templates. We've got a realistic looking site here, which makes use of your theme and everything you set up, right? So you can scroll here. So the first two tabs are variables you set up. We generate variables, CSS variables that make everything accessible. And then you can visualize it in these three here. And finally, before I finish up here, is you've created your theme. You have all these variables generated. How do you use it? You go into code here, and you can export a file as CSS or JSON. So as you can see here, I've selected CSS. I have a load of variables here that I can basically copy over to use. Same with JSON, and the way you use it depends on your application. You can use it as CSS directly, or in our repo, there's instructions on how to use it to create a theme for Material UI, which is what we've used. And we've actually used it for a couple of our own apps. It's made things really, really easy, especially when we want to change things too. So I highly recommend using this as a starting point. And that's about it. So I think that covers everything. We've gone from creating the theme, all the components, all the atoms and molecules, and to exporting a final product right here for development. And I hope you've seen how useful this can be. So I will, without further ado, pass on to Aaron, who has a little more information to share.
Thank you, Evan. Let me share my screen. So Evan gave a great introduction to how the code looks. How do you use it? How do you interact with it? What I want to share with you is, okay, now we've caught your attention. How can you explore the project further? I want to talk about the code repos we have and the information that they contain. I'd like to talk a little bit about the general architecture of the code, the storage solutions we use, how you can obtain a version of Theme Builder to try, and also how you can possibly contribute to our project. It's good to know that there's two main repositories that contribute to our project. We have the top repo is for the web server, the web application, and the second is for the SDK, which is a NPM module that we published to npm.js. And of course, we have documentation. This is the go-to if you're a new person coming to the project. This is how you learn, interesting things like, why is there a theme builder? What is atomic design? And you can delve further into the documentation and actually find how to do code modifications and affect, for example, creating new components. So you'll observe in the general architecture that it's about like any other web application, right? We're node-based with Express and TypeScript. We do support authentication to a degree, but it's not really on par with real applications yet. It's just under development. We also have REST APIs in the back end. As you can see, the UI, when they make storage requests, it's all through REST APIs. The REST APIs manage your design systems. So as you create a design system or you delete a design system or you modify a design system, it's all persistence through these REST APIs and into an embedded database in most cases. We'll cover that in storage later. The front end, the client, runs in a browser. It's a React application. We use React components based on Material UI. And we find that that's really helpful. We find it to be a very flexible library, and it supports theming, which is important, as you'll see later. The SDK is an NPM module, as I mentioned, that the client pulls in when it builds. And the main point of interaction between the React application and the SDK is this theme builder class. The theme builder is a singleton that the client will create, and then all further interactions with the SDK will be through this singleton. Inside the SDK, there's, of course, many different types of classes, but it's important to note that the atomic design elements like atoms, molecules, organisms are all reflected in the SDK. The SDK is what drives the UI. The UI is only a reflection of the data that is contained in the SDK. And we'll cover more of that in a minute. The other main piece to understand is that the SDK is responsible for creating the exported data. So as Evan mentioned, that's CSS or JSON currently. New generators could, of course, be created, and we made this modular so that actually can happen. So this is mostly a reiteration of what you saw on the previous, or what I talked to on the previous slide. Some highlights here that I have not mentioned yet is in the SDK repo, there's a tutorial. This tutorial is how to use the SDK at a code level. It's how do you create a theme builder instance? How do you create a design system? How do you modify a design system? All these great kinds of things that the SDK is responsible for. And I find the tutorials very useful because it gives you a feeling for how do you use this SDK outside of theme builder. The possibilities are endless, and we're exploring some. For example, we're thinking of Figma plugins possibly, or what can we do with this logic that knows how to calculate colors that are accessible, but maybe you don't want a web application UI. Maybe you want to use it in some other way. Like I mentioned, the theme builder and design system classes are the most important and the ones that the front end interacts with the most. And as Evan mentioned, the SDK is responsible for all the calculations and adjustments that happen as you change values in the user interface. when you change a value in the user interface, this will cause updates to the CSS variables that are stored in the root of the document. And that is why you can see the theme builder UI change as you change design system values. It's really very cool. And it gives, I think it gives the user a very good idea of what this design system is going to end up looking like in their application, because they see it applied to the theme builder application. And of course, the SDK is also responsible for exporting the design system. The one thing I wanted to illustrate here is, here's an example of a molecule in the UI called molecule content. This is the page that contains all of the molecules that a user can select from. And if a user is going to show, for example, the avatar molecule, this is what we do. We have an avatars molecule component, and we pass in from the SDK the design system molecules avatars property, and boom, the avatars molecule now knows exactly how to behave. It knows exactly what values are defined in this particular design system for all the things that the avatar molecule cares about. For example, the border width and all that kind of stuff, the border color. So that's just an example of how the back end drives the front end. We'll talk a minute about storage. I just wanted to point out that as you use different flavors of theme builder, you might notice differences. For example, if you use one of the Netlify deployments, that will use browser local storage. If you use theme builder in a Docker container or a locally built instance, that will use TingoDB. TingoDB allows us to use MongoDB type interfaces, but the persistence is actually done on the file system. As you can see, these are just two things that could possibly be done. You could add, as I mentioned here, there's documentation for adding different storage types if you want to support additional types of storage. And by default, the SDK uses memory storage, as you can as is conveyed by the name. That's not persistent storage. The SDK does not persist information. Okay, so how can you try out Theme Builder? Well, we have two links that FINOS has made available to us. One reflects the master branch, which is the most stable version of Theme Builder currently. And it also has given us access to the dev branch, a deployed version of the dev branch. So this way, developers, as they start making changes and oops, they see a behavior they don't expect, they need to understand, is this something that's reflecting a change I just made, or is this something that just exists in the code by default? So this will give a developer a chance to try out the latest dev branch in parallel to their development effort, and be able to determine if the behavior they don't want to see is caused by their code or already existed in the dev branch when they branched from it. And you'll see in the README for these repos that there is a way to build Theme Builder as a Docker image. We also publish to Docker Hub. When we update the master branch and the dev branch, we will publish to Docker Hub so that you do not have to do these builds. You can go to Docker Hub, grab a container or grab an image, instantiate a container, and play with Theme Builder to your heart's desire. And finally, how can you contribute? We mentioned earlier that there's so many different roles that play a part in Theme Builder. We can always use project lead advice. How can we make our meetings more streamlined? How can we make our roadmaps more efficient? How can we engage developers and not distract them? Designers are the linchpin. They are the cornerstone of our project. All of our UI was built using designers, using Figma, using wireframes, using design thinking, all throughout. Front-end and back-end developers, of course, are always welcome. we want to implement the vision of the designers and create an accessible experience for everybody. DevOps specialists, of course, are very welcome. We mentioned earlier that we have a design ops tool chain we want to create to make this communication between the developer and the designer more seamless, to eliminate barriers and try to get the best development experience end to end in a product. Testers, we have a very rudimentary testing strategy. We really could benefit from subject matter experts who understand test, especially accessibility test. In my own opinion, it would be wonderful if we could demonstrate, show a code repo running and then a code repo running with a theme builder design system and show the difference in accessibility test scores. That's my dream come true. And hopefully one day we'll get there. But accessibility testers would go a long way toward helping us. And finally, technical writers. Of course, nothing goes anywhere without our documentation. We expect our documentation to serve both new developers and also to serve seasoned developers who are just trying to learn a new facet of theme builder. And the technical writers make this all happen, and we thank them profusely. And that is the end of my presentation. I will pass this off. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. It takes a village or a world of villages. So I'll bring things home. So I'll share my screen. And let's share that way so that you can see. So I'm Paula Paul, and I am one of the maintainers of Theme Builder. I maintain things in different ways. Everything's not just about code. I work on issues. I've talked to the people at Figma about getting FINOS licenses and all sorts of things, including hosting a community call every other week. So I'm a community connector of sorts. I serve the board of the OpenJS Foundation, where they serve out Node and NPM, which is underpinnings of Theme Builder. I'm also a FINOS ambassador, and I've been really honored to serve the Anita B organization. As you heard from Natasha, Theme Builder was featured at Open Source Day last year, and it will be again this year. So be sure to join us at those events. And I would like to do a call to action and thank you for joining us, and also ask if you could find a way to stay involved. There are lots of ways to do that are not difficult. You could email help@finos.org and ask if you could get an invitation to the Slack, the FINOS Slack, and in particular, join us on the Accessibility Theme Builder channel. We have weekly project calls on Thursdays, and FINOS has a public calendar that gives you the Zoom links for those meetings for the Accessibility Theme Builder, the community call every other week, and many other FINOS special interest groups. You can just head on over to the GitHub project board, and we've tagged a bunch of issues with help wanted. Those issues might be of all sorts of levels of expertise or subject matter, like design versus code, or just community building or writing blogs. So if you're looking for something that is a good first issue, there's also good first issue tags that might be on some of those help wanted items. And if you come to the community calls or the project calls, or you contribute, comment on an issue, help us refine some of those issues, you can earn a Credly badge. We have 3 initial badges you can get from the Linux Foundation. That's simply, hey, I'm a community champion. I come to meetings. I participate on the calls. There's also a code contributor, core contributor badge that you can get for contributing to an issue that's either code or design. And then there's a specific badge for a design contributor. So we'll check those out and, spruce up your LinkedIn page. You can learn more at some big events coming up. Open Source and Finance Forum happens in London in June and in New York City in November. Those are great events. You can learn more at the links. And again, Grace Hopper Open Source Day, one of my favorite events. Aaron mentioned that we have links through FINOS where you can try Theme Builder. Theme Builder is part of the FINOS project sandbox because FINOS hosts a number of open source projects, TraderX, Legend, the Common Domain Model, Waltz, and FINOS provides those kinds of environments so that contributors can kick the tires and just have an environment where they can share their work. I'll take a minute here to call out the mentorship program. Our friends at Discover contributed funds that allowed the Linux Foundation to create a paid mentorship opportunity. We're no longer accepting applicants for that for this session, but I'm currently talking to other organizations who may be able to sponsor additional mentorship opportunities. And that's a personal goal of mine, is to enable more of these mentorship opportunities. You can see the current mentorship program is running from June 1st to September, and they are funded mentorship opportunities. Last but not least, FINOS offers a lot of ways to get involved, not just with Theme Builder, but in a number of special interest groups, like AI Readiness is the newest. I'm personally involved with the DEI, or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Special Interest Group. And to me, accessibility is part of inclusivity, the I of DEI. And I'm really happy to connect this project to that special interest group. Also open source readiness, Zenith, tech enablement, such as inner source readiness, DevOps, and business use cases. There are special interest groups in all of these areas that have meetings on the FINOS calendar. And if you're just interested in learning more about it, or just getting a chance to network with great organizations like Discover, the other FINOS member groups, this is a great way to do it. This is how organizations that belong to FINOS find talent, contribute to open source, and just meet a bunch of great people. Personally, I love working in open source projects because in tech, job opportunities may come and go. You may be at a company for 2 or 3 years, or for 10 or 20. And, those companies may come and go, but your open source connections and your open source community is something that you always carry with you no matter what. And I am going to wrap that up quickly.